Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. And today I kind of wanted to talk about some features that I want to see in Star Citizen before beta. Now, there has been a lot of talk about beta because of some recent leaks, and I made a previous video about the 5 planets that we could see in Star Citizen next. Okay. But today I wanted to talk about some features that CIG hasn't really gone over that I really want to see them explore before the beta comes out, or before that conversation expands. Now we are getting a lot of features in 2024. Hopefully, presumably, that's what CIG is currently working on trying to deliver. So it might seem like asking for more on top of that is crazy talk. But realistically speaking, I think that if we're going to talk about beta, the question kind of becomes is, what do we as players personally think this game needs before we really see this game in that beta phase? Okay. So a lot of stuff is coming online this year and presumably next year, but is any of that stuff really going to put the game in a place where it's really ready for mainstream, where it's really something that you would recommend your friends, where it's really something that you can keep as your main game? Okay, because what a lot of people do is they kind of come in and out of the community, they come in and out of the game, they play it for a little while, and then they kind of put it down until a new patch drops. That's kind of the cycle of the player base right now, because it's hard to stick with all the way through. That's kind of changing a little bit because the game is in, more stable state. It has a lot more features. There are a lot of things to get involved with. I've been playing FC, more than I have ever played, this game. I'm clocking in, roughly probably like 16 hours a week, as a full grown adult who, has a life and, family stuff to deal with and work. That's a lot of gameplay hours. So I think that, this game is steadily approaching a place where, I could definitely recommend it. I can, see somebody just playing Star Citizen full time. Okay. So what are those features? We're going to jump right into it. So first off, I think the biggest thing that needs to be nailed down, but not balance, because again, beta is not really about balance. Beta is about just having the feature implemented in the game so we get a clear picture of what the game is. So the thing that I think that CIG needs to nail down before this game could be considered beta, first and foremost, is economy. Okay, and we've talked about this in length in a lot of other videos. So I'm not going to, beat a dead horse, or whatever the saying is. But I think there is a real divergence amongst what we know the economy is going to be like and kind of what is being alluded to. And a lot of that has to do with Quanta. Now, I know that there was a point last year or the year before that where CIG kind of stated that a lot of the work that they did on Quanta is currently in the game. This stuff with probability volumes and whatnot is kind of what is hanging up the full implementation. Because what I talked about in, one of my earlier videos was that CIG really needs multiple star systems to be able to balance any sort of economy. Okay. And it kind of, brings us back to that conversation about what are the first 5 star systems that are going to be added to the game. And, this talk about globalization, how, each star system might need some type of, primary commodity that will drive players to that star system to trade and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the economy is a huge part of this game, and it's going to be something that they need to figure out how they want to handle it. Because right now, a lot of the economy changes are very surface level, and they're designed more like for mission balance and fairness and that type of stuff. But it's not really leading towards anything. It's not an economic system that essentially, lays out a plan for the player. What do you need to do as a player? You basically get in the game and you just do whatever you want. Now I know CIG spoke of when in terms of the economy, they're going to change things a little bit so there's no trade lanes and it's more of something that is a lot more dynamic, whereas certain locations will need certain things and the players will get missions to do those things, because right now we have trading but we don't really have hauling. So what hauling is going to do is it is going to set preconditioned necessities for different locations, essentially. So essentially CIG will say that microtech needs these commodities to survive and to support the inhabitants of the city, and all settlements will essentially have similar requirements. They'll probably need processed food, distilled spirits, they might need AV equipment and things like that, like kind of how we saw during I believe it was either Fleet Week or another in-game event where the fireworks was going on, and hauling fireworks made a lot of money, but again, that was still trading. We had to buy the fireworks. So I think CIG needs to really nail that down, and that's hard to do when there's only one star system. That's hard to do when you don't know what the draw of another star system is going to be. And to balance that out, I think is a beta phase thing, but to kind of have the skeleton of what that economy is going to look like, I feel like is really important, and they definitely need to start talking to the players more about that before we could have any conversation about beta, because when you get in the game, obviously you want the ability to do whatever you want, but you want there to be, set rules in the world that you're existing in, guidelines, kind of how gameplay is expected to go down. And then you can decide if you want to go outside the box or not. You know what I mean? Give us the baseline first, and then give us the ability to choose if we want to go outside the bounds of that. I think that's key. So obviously, number one is going to be the economy. Okay. Number two, I think, is kind of the mechanics. Now, we are getting, CIG is working towards master modes and the flight model and changing that. I know there's been different videos circulating around about the new quantum jump animation. We've already also seen demos of the quantum mode and the combat mode, and switching between them, and we're able to test out master modes on certain ships in Arena Commander now. But there are a lot of ships in the game that definitely need this balance pass or this flight model upgrade, as well as control surfaces, because control surfaces are going to greatly change how a lot of players deal with certain things. Now, especially with bunkers and these ground locations that CIG is adding in. If hovering takes up a tremendous amount of fuel, and it doesn't, and it's not really viable to do that to attack a ground location, it might encourage the importance of ground vehicles. So something that simple completely changes the way that the player is going to play the game. And the way the player is going to change the game is essentially the way that CIG is going to get feedback to balance it in the beta phase. So before you go to the beta phase, you do need to have the flight model that you intend to use. So you have the flight model that you intend to use, and then in beta phase you can balance it. You can tweak the numbers to, okay, this ship has this roll rate, this ship has this pitch rate, and you can play with those numbers in the beta phase. But before the beta phase, you need the actual finished model with you know, the QCM mode and the you know, the atmospheric flight handling and that type of stuff. You need to nail that down before you go into the beta phase, okay? And because there's so many ships that need this change, and it kind of leads into, you know, the things with component attach and detach, and the upgrading of these vehicles to gold standard. I don't know. I wouldn't say that every vehicle needs to be gold standard before Star Citizen goes into beta, but it would help with the, if you're essentially going through and, you know, reworking all ships to have their components attach and detach. Some of the things and the mechanics that, you know, are you engage with in a ship, in my opinion, it requires them to be further along. Again, a good example of this is the resource management system. Now, I don't know if the resource management system is going to come to every ship when it does land. I know CIG are working on it on ships like the C2 that we saw, and the Hammerhead, but you're really going to, at the very least, I would say they would need to have resource management in all of the large class ships. I would say these are ships that are constellation size and larger. And, you know, this grouping of ships is not a small amount of ships. There are still a lot of ships in this category. And so you're working on the flight model with the resource management, the component attach and detach, just to get the ships in a place that you can actually balance. Again, when I made that video about the Zeus, you know, a lot of people were saying it doesn't have 4 medium shields. That's crazy. You know, says you're going to rebalance components. I'm like, a component slot is a component slot. Yes, they still have to balance the components, but if you have, you know, one medium shield is always going to be worse than 4 medium shields. I don't care how you cut the cake. You know, 4 is more than 1. So in that situation, I feel like CIG really needs to nail down what these ships have, so then they can move on to the balance phase. They need to say, this ship has these components, these size components do this, that, and the other. And then they can kind of tweak the numbers and say, okay, you can do this for tuning. Because again, you look at resource management, you're supposed to be able to tune components and do all this stuff. You know, it's a lot of work ahead of them, but I think that getting the fundamentals of that nailed down before beta is critical. Okay, that's number 2. Okay, number 3, I would say, is the mechanics. Okay, so having a tier 0 version of each major intended mechanic, I think, is critical before beta, because again, beta refers to the testing and balance phase. So you don't want to be building new mechanics in the beta phase. Okay, you want to have all the gameplay mechanics in the game before you move to beta. So that's medical, that's salvage, that's combat, you know, piracies in there, bounty hunting with the players, you know, taking prisoners to local jails or whatnot. I know CIG kind of teased that a little bit. You definitely want to have capital ships, of course. Like I said earlier, resource management and the components in there. And you also want to have base missions for all these professions. Okay. That way you can get feedback in the beta phase. If you don't have any base missions for these mechanics, you really can't get the feedback that you need to balance these things because players aren't doing them. And a great example of that is the starfare and refueling. Okay, the refueling mechanic is in the game, but there's no reason to do it, and there are no missions for it. So CIG can't really get the data they need to properly balance that gameplay loop, in my opinion. I think if you're going to release a mechanic like the starfare's refueling, you should have like NPC ships that are stranded out in space that you can take your starfare to and then refuel those NPCs. Every gameplay loop in this game needs a needs a PvE mission. Okay, so in terms of medical, you just put NPCs on planets that are stranded, and then you let players respond to those medical beacons and help up those NPCs. You have refueling, you just put a stranded NPC in space and have players refuel those NPCs. Okay, so same thing with towing. You have a SRV, you put a stranded NPC in space for the player to tow back to a pad. Right now there are different mechanics, but all of them are tied to PvP, which means that you have to engage with another player to test out that mechanic. I feel like to get it in a state ready for beta, all of these mechanics need missions tied to them. Okay, again, these mechanics are designed for PvP or player-to-player interaction and multi-crew, but you still need that PvE mission in place so you can get data, like a baseline data. Because again, in a PvP situation where players are interacting together, you're not going to get a baseline of what this mechanic entails and how the players are interacting with it, because it's going to be all over the place. How, what players can play with their friends, what org events are happening. It's all random. But if you put missions in, then as soon as the PTU opens up, or as soon as the PU goes live, all the players will obviously just try the missions. So then you can get your baseline and you can do your testing and you can get, the data that you need from it. So again, the first thing was economy. The second thing was having all the mechanics in game. Okay. The third thing was missions. Okay. Every profession should have PvE missions tied to it. Okay. The fourth thing I would say is tutorial. Now, I know we have a tutorial in the base you get in the game for the first time. You have like a 15-30 minutes, first 30 minutes of the game that you interact with, and you can how to eat, how to walk around, do all that stuff, how to get to the space station. But CIG needs to figure out a way to kind of introduce the mechanics to the players and have tutorials surrounding that. Because right now, when somebody goes to do mining, they look up a guide on YouTube. When someone goes to do salvage, they have to look up a guide on YouTube. And nothing against the Star Citizen community content creators, they're amazing. But as you guys will know, that the Star Citizen, the SC community has to redo those videos every year, twice a year. As new things come online, these tutorials have to change. So essentially CIG has to lock down the mechanic, and they have to create a standard tutorial for it to say that this is the interface for mining and salvage, and there's a place where you can go. Like, I think a good place to put a lot of these tutorials is in Arena Commander. instead of having it in the persistent universe, I think CIG should essentially go to Arena Commander and essentially you can test out this mechanic without owning the ship. And this is valuable for a number of reasons. The first is that a lot of people, again, because Star Citizen is a multiplayer game, a lot of people might be working on their friendship. And you really don't have that environment where people engage with gameplay on ships that they don't own. Right now, especially because there's kind of no way to do that. You could rent a ship and test out something, but when it comes to, engaging with a mechanic for a ship that you don't own, you just have to play with friends. So when you do that, the problem that you run into is that your friend has to teach you how to do this thing, or you have to look up a guide how to do this thing. But it's kind of like, CIG could make it immersive, like do it like how we had the flight school in old Arena Commander with Gilly. I think that would be really cool if there's like a university in Arena Commander that players could go to, and they could learn salvage, they could learn mining, they could learn using tractor beams, they could learn all of these different, they could, practice turret gunning stuff. Having those tutorials in Arena Commander, I think would really be a powerful experience for the player base, and it would allow people to kind of test out mechanics in a limited way for ships they don't own and see if they want to invest their time in that gameplay. Again, I think it's one of those things where the goal is to buy the ship in game, right? So you could go to Arena Commander and let's say it's prospector mining. You do the prospector mining gameplay loop. It's not going to affect the persistent universe because you can't make money doing it in Arena Commander. It's just a tutorial. Okay, so you also don't get the full scope of mining because, of course, you don't have, the refinery ships that are going to be playing with it, like the Expanse, and you don't have the whole gameplay loop of, taking it and making money from what you mine. Okay, so you're essentially just showing the player the UI and how to get into that gameplay. I think tutorials are hugely important because Star Citizen is a very kind of, expansive game that you have a lot of different things that you can do. Obviously, some of these things that it is fun to learn it on your own. So I don't think these tutorials needs to be, comprehensive or anything like that, but really just give the player introduction to what they're looking at. And I think making it a kind of citizen university would be kind of like a cool big thing to get a lot of new players acclimated to the game. And I feel like if they had that, a lot of people would be like, okay, now is the time to dive in. And then of course in the beta phase you can always balance that out. Okay, and I think kind of the final thing, that CIG needs to, kind of nail down before, they can go to beta is really the store system. Now, I know it's kind of a sore spot, a question of contention because this is a crowdfunded game. But I know a lot of people are looking at the way ship sales work and kind of assuming that ship sales, will end at some point when the game goes live or maybe beta or, how prices might get adjusted in the future, how, game package and different things might be handled. How, what do you call it? FPS gear is handled, how skins are handled. I know I talked about it, in one of my previous videos. I think CIG really needs to nail down the skin system because it's just not in a very good place right now. And the same thing, when it comes to buying armor and weapons. And I know CIG is working on a way to figure that out. And the same kind of goes for, real all of the items in the game that has to do with in-game items, because with crafting getting added, what are you crafting? Can you craft, store items, store guns, store skins? I feel like CIG needs to put a system in place and make it crystal clear to the community how the store is going to be handled during the beta. Because right now, of course, the game is in development, so it's kind of the Wild West. And I do like how, diversive the store is. I don't even know how to explain it, because Star Citizen store is just so different than other video game, microtransaction stores. But the ability to CCU chain and do all this stuff, I think that's really good, and I hope they keep that around during the beta and after release. And I personally don't have a problem with CIG continuing to sell ships in the beta and after release. I think they might do something where it's they only sell starter packs. Obviously, you have to continue to sell the game, and starter packs come with ships. So I think throughout the life of the game, CIG is always going to sell starter packs. But I think that buying all the ships in the game, I think they might, section that off to Fleet Week and IAE. So throughout the year, you can only buy starter packs. And then during Fleet Week, you can buy the military ships. And during IAE, you can buy all ships. And then, of course, throughout the year, if CIG makes a concept ship or releases a new ship, then obviously, you would sell that first. And I think that that's fine. I'm okay with that. Okay. But I know that there is kind of a lot of promotions that happen. Like right now, there's a new promotion where, we can buy all of the ships from last year just kind of randomly. I'm not a business person. I'm not going to tell CIG what to do. I don't have a problem with that, but I know that there are some other members of the community that might. And it is kind of weird when it comes to balancing and scaling the game, because if you really want to balance the game in a beta phase, you really need to kind of lock down who has what, because you want players to grind for certain things, and you just want to make it clear what your intentions are as a company for the player base. So if people are saying, it's a kind of pay to skip situation where, okay, I can go on the store, I can buy armors and guns and ships and vehicles and stuff like that, or I can, grind and play in game and earn that stuff. That's fine. Again, I'm completely fine with that. I just think that it's important to share that with the community if that is your intention. Now, I really feel personally that CIG should separate craftable items from in-game store items and web store items. That way, craftable items are truly unique, and you just have to play the game to get craftable items. But I know CIG also is, thinking about going the real loot, real armor route. I personally don't like that much, because I feel like it doesn't give them the flexibility that, a player created real item system would give them. Because again, it's one of those things where you're going to run into a situation where people will absolutely, farm these items, do a huge markup, and then sell them to other players. Now, CIG kind of has the RMC thing a little tightened down now. Before, it was kind of crazy with, people selling money and whatnot. But again, I think the key here is just to come up with a plan for the community, make it clear what you want, what your direction that you're going down is, and then people could decide, okay, is this something that I'm okay with? continually supporting financially for the foreseeable future, because I have no problem buying skins once in a while to, especially to support a game, because this game is crowdfunded. I mean, this is not something like it's a release game and you're just literally putting money in shareholders' pockets. No, they're taking that money and they're building in the systems that you want. And in the beta phase, they will definitely still need money because they will be making more content and they will be balancing things. Like, again, CIG is not going to stop at the first 5 systems. They're, presumably going to continue making star systems as expansions and, continue adding to the single player Squadron 42 in, Squadron 42 other chapters, new games for that. So that money is going to go directly to the game. So yeah, those are my 5 wish lists for Star Citizen before beta. Things that I want CIG to kind of nail down before they start talking about beta. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. I think this is a really interesting conversation, particularly right now, because honestly, I think we're so close and the game is approaching that place where it's getting a little bit more mainstream. It's getting that mainstream attention. There are more eyes on the game. People are considering it, less of a scam, that whole kind of clickbaity, conversation. So I think that kind of nailing down these 5 pillars, I feel like people would consider Star Citizen in a beta phase if they did that. But I want to hear from you guys. What do you think CIG needs to do before this game can be considered a beta? I think I made a video about this similar to this before. But again, now that we have a lot more information after CitizenCon of what CIG actually intends to at least try to bring out this year, I think this conversation is even more relevant. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys. But that's going to be it for me here today. I don't want to take up too much more of you guys' time. Like I always say at the end of these videos, like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Salute.